everyone, welcome back. If you're new, my name is Mark and I have been working as a visual effect artist for almost a decade now, for clients like Netflix, HBO Max, Apple TV and many more. In this video, I wanted to showcase the important steps when it comes to integrating CG elements with your footage. This video focuses on the very basics and specifically on scenarios where you don't have a color checker or a chrome or gray sphere to help you in post with color correction and lighting your 3D scene. What we do have though is the footage, notes from the camera setup and also a HDR image from the location. So even just with these we have plenty to work from. In this video I will be using After Effects for compositing and the Cinema 4D for the 3D part alongside the Redshift render engine. I tried to put this video together in a way that you could apply the same workflow no matter what compositing or 3D software you're using. You may just need to check on how to achieve certain things in your chosen software. There is a full step-by-step tutorial coming to my Patreon as well. You can subscribe for free and get notified when this tutorial drops. Alright, so in my opinion, it's best to start with analyzing your footage. Let's see. So we have two shots, a wide and a mid close-up. The plan is to add a realistic render of a robot to both shots. Starting with the wide, which is usually harder, I can see that there is grass, which can be a bit more difficult as the character is meant to be interacting with it, as well as the shadows will look quite a bit different if they are casted onto grass. Regarding the mid close-up, I don't see anything that would particularly make it hard. We have a clean plate to remove the 360 camera, so there should be no problem with this shot. I am working in the ACES color space, both in After Effects and Cinema 4D. So the next step for me is going to be exporting the footage from DaVinci Resolve as EXR sequences with the ACES CG color space. You do not need to do this step if you're working in a different color space. Next, I import the clips into After Effects. I make sure that both clips are in the ACES color space. We are using Rec 709 as the display color space. Let's export the first frame for both shots, which we can use in Cinema 4D as reference. Let's also make sure that these are in Rec 709. Let's jump into Cinema 4D to create the 3D scene. Okay, firstly, I'm going to create a background, then create a standard Cinema 4D material, then import the reference images we exported from After Effects and add it to the background object. So now we can see the footage as the background. Next, I'll create a plane, then I'll create a camera and add the settings I know for sure. This was shot on a Blackmagic 6K Pro, which has a Super 35 sensor. So I'll change the sensor size to 23.9. I know that the focal length is 24mm. Then just kind of move around and find the same angle as your camera. You could do this very accurately with a camera calibrating tool, which I do have in Cinema 4D, but it's quite an easy camera angle to match. Once that's done, I'll add the non-animated 3D model of the robot as a reference. This is most likely where the animation is going to end. I'll create the materials and I am just using a standard PBR texture workflow. This is literally the textures this 3D model came with. Next, let's add a dome light. Let's import the HDRI we have. Let's rotate the HDRI environment on the Y-axis until we match what it should look like in the background based on the reference image we have in the viewport. Now that we have some lighting, let me go to my camera and add a Redshift camera tag, then go to the background and import the ACES CG export of this clip from DaVinci Resolve. Before we continue, I would like to thank Audio for sponsoring this video. Audio has a massive catalog of music and sound effects with unlimited access to tons of curated songs from top indie artists and composers. Plus, they are adding new songs to their catalog every week and growing more than any other platform right now. Audio Pro gets you a single license that covers practically everything from YouTube monetization, social media, weddings, to even commercial work. For clients under 100 employees, they have something called lifetime coverage, which means that any track you download during your subscription is licensed to that project forever, even if you cancel your subscription. I used Link Match 2.0 for my previous video and it worked so well. I was looking for a soundtrack similar to Tenet, so I just copied a link from YouTube, or you can also use Spotify, and it found very similar tracks in literally seconds. It's honestly the best soundtrack matching tool I've used so far. You can use the links below or the coupon code MARKMIKO to get 70% off your first year of Audio Pro, which includes unlimited music, sound effects, stems and AI search tools. Alright, back to the video. Let's make the plane a shadow catcher. For this I'm going to increase its size, then increase the amount of segments it has. Then I'm going to duplicate it and place one of them at the bottom just so we have a backup of this. Then I'm going to click on the duplicate and press C, which makes it an editable object. Again, this is tailored to Cinema 4D. This may be a different process in whatever 3D software you may be using. Anyway, let's add the Redshift object tag. Then I'm going to go to the Matte tab and enable both the general and the shadow options. So now we have shadows, but they look pretty sad at the moment. So next, I create a new redshift material and I'm going to camera project the footage onto the ground. Then if I increase the reflection, refraction and diffuse scale, we'll see the ground actually affecting the 3D model as it would in real life. And also just a quick tip if you're on Cinema 4D, I'm going to check on apply to secondary rays as well as effects alpha, which is going to make sure that when we render, the plane won't be visible, only the shadows. Now I can preview what this looks like and it looks alright, but as you can see, the feet are supposed to be hidden by some of the grass that would be in front of it in real life. Also, if you check the shadows on other real life objects, you'll see that there is quite a long stretch of shadows. It's fairly harsh as well, although there is definitely some softness to them. Even though our HDRI is in the right spot, it does not create the shadows that occurred in real life. To fix this, I'm going to add a spotlight, place it roughly where the sun would be. I'll increase the cone angle, then increase the intensity and the exposure to somewhat match the shadows that are nearby. I'm also going to increase the softness of the shadows to 65 so the edges are not so sharp. Then I also like to enable the legacy options as I am more used to those. Now we have the correct shadows, but it still looks like it's projected onto just a plane, which it is to be fair. So to fix this, we're going to add some grass. So I'm going to add a matrix object, which is basically a cloner. Add the ground as the object and change some of the settings to match it to the real grass. I'm going to increase the count to 5000 for now. If I go out of the camera's view, I can see where the path is, and also we technically only need to add the grass where this character is walking through and wherever the shadows are being casted to. So let's select the area around the character, avoiding the path of course. This may be changed later on, but it's very easy to just update the selection, which would then update the grass. I am also going to add a random effector, which makes the grass look random. I am using this collection of grass that I bought from CG Trader. It's great, but if you check the grass in the footage, you'll see it's much shorter. So I decrease the size of the grass and increase the count to 125,000. Lastly, I'm going to enable the matte and shadow options for the grass as well. If you are using Cinema 4D, then I would suggest also going to the visibility tab and turning everything off apart from the receive shadows option. Now, as you can see, the shadows look much better and also the feet looks more integrated. Let's move on to adding the animation to the character. For this example, I will be using the Mixamo library by Adobe. I found a walking animation that we can use for the wide shot and found this sort of looking around idle animation for the mid close-up. Let's download these animations as FBX files. Let's import the walking animation. I'm going to place the end position of the animation to where we placed the reference robot, so it stops around there. I'm going to replace the textures. Now if I go back to frame 1 and preview, you'll notice in the beginning of the animation he is standing on the path. The path is sort of this rocky surface, but the shadow seems too flat once again. To improve how this looks, I can go back to the camera projection material and create a black and white version, for which I just use a color correction node, then add a bump node and use this to drive the bump, and you can see how much more realistic it looks with this on. The shot is ready to be rendered. Let's move on to the mid close-up. I'll resave this project file and rename it to shot 2 version 1. I'm going to import the idle animation for the mid close-up. I will leave the ground as it is because this will affect the lighting, and to make sure the camera projection is working, I'll duplicate the camera and leave the original camera as it is. Maybe let's even rename it to camera shot 1. Let's replace the background with the reference for the mid close-up. This shot was filmed on the same camera, so I'll leave the sensor size to be the same, but I'll change the focal length to 85mm, then reposition the camera to match this shot's perspective. I can leave all the lighting the same as it's in sequence. However, I will add the depth of field in Cinema 4D, as in my opinion that looks better, and I'm ready to export this shot as well. Let's move on to the compositing. So I imported what we rendered from Cinema 4D. In my case, it's the actual render, then the crypto matte, and lastly the multi-passes I rendered, which are the shadows, emission, and depth. Let's start with the wide shot. So here's the comp with the source footage. I'll drop in the render from Cinema 4D, add the levels effect. I'm first going to match the luma levels, so I'm going to hover over the darkest area around the CG render. I'm basically just adjusting while hovering over both the darkest areas on the footage and the CG render until they match. So I am going to increase the gamma, that's a bit brighter. Then I am also going to increase the black levels. Then I am going to change the viewport to only show the red channel. Then I will also switch the channel in the levels effect to red as well. I'll play around with the gamma until it seems to be matching. You can look at all the values such as the hue, saturation and brightness. Then do the same for the green and blue channels, just matching the CG render to the background. Then I'll go back to the RGB view, and now you can see the color correction seems quite good. Next, we have a red gaffer tape near his foot, and we can use this to match the saturation values. Once again comparing the hue, saturation and brightness brightness for both areas, and at about -15 saturation that seems to work. And also I'm going to decrease the master hue to -2, seems to match it better. Then let's add some motion blur. I will be using Real Smart Motion Blur in this case. Then add a camera lens blur effect and use a depth map to determine where the focus is, so it matches with the footage. Lastly, I am going to add a match grain effect and use the footage as the source. I'll dial it down to about 0.090 to match the footage. Then I will add the crypto matte to the comp, isolate the 3D object, then bring in the multipass EXR and set it to show the shadows. Then I will use a luma matte option to isolate the shadows on the ground only. Let's pre-compose this, then add an adjustment layer and once again use the luma matte option. I'm going to hover over the shadows on the right side of the frame and the shadows created by the robot, and once again match the values of hue, saturation and brightness. You can see our original shadows had quite a bit of red yellow in them, so I had to make it kind of bluer to match it to the real life shadows. It is the exact same process for the mid close-up, so match the CG render to the background with all of the effects I just listed for the wide shot. Then I graded both of these shots in DaVinci Resolve. Here are the results once more. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I would like to thank Audio again for sponsoring this video. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel and don't forget to check out my Patreon.